and a half, 2 years. And I'm gonna, because he says it, or he, excuse me, writes it better than I can say. So I'm just going to read a few paragraphs here, and then, like I say, I'll get to your questions. The miracle of the American spirit began to reveal itself in the late spring of 2009. We were still in the midst of an economic meltdown. Our homes and our 401ks were, and for many of us are, shockingly reduced in value. Many of us had lost our jobs and had our income substantially reduced. The greatest corporation in American history, General Motors, was going bankrupt. The great Wall Street banks that commanded the heights of world finance were illiquid and moving towards insolvency, and during the early weeks of February, the newly inaugurated president had talked about our economic collapse being a catastrophe from which we might never recover. Most of the country had turned fearful. I know I was scared, and so were some very experienced New York financiers whom I know personally. President Obama started applying the typical remedies: bailouts, nationalizations, trillion-dollar stimulus, spreading the wing of the state to, quote, protect the helpless people. And then the American miracle occurred, not in Washington, but in the hearts and heads of the American people. The polls started to show that the American people wanted wanted Washington to do less, not more. They didn't want to be sheltered under the wing of the state. The American people, now this is great, this captures what is so special about this country. The American people feared the permanent loss of liberty more than they feared the temporary loss of their income or property. And he closes with this: no other people in the world would have responded to economic danger by seeking more liberty and less government protection. No other people would have thought to themselves, quote, if I have to suffer economically in order not to steal from my grandchildren, so be it. Enjoy the privilege that you've given me to represent you and your family and your small business in Washington. And I take it serious. I do believe this freshman class, and many of these guys that I said are members of the Republican Study Committee, they get it. They come here on a mission to fix the country, and we're all about doing that. Now, let me just say one thing. It won't be easy, because you guys all understand civics better than probably others. Harry Reid still runs the Senate, and Barack Obama is still in the White House. So it's going to be tough to get it all done in these 2 years. But what we have to do, and I think about this every day, we have to fight and do what we said we were going to do, fight for what we said we were going to do, and help create a context, help create a framework where whatever candidate we run for president has a good chance to win, and actually make sure Barack Obama is only in the White House for 4 years. Because I really think, no, this company's too big to fail. It is just the wrong approach. Churchill had a great line, and I remember thinking about this in the fall of 2008 when the first big bailout vote came up, the TARP vote for bailing out the Wall Street banks. And because there were folks who I actually valued their opinion who were in favor of this. And I just said, we don't want to start down this road where we're treating certain big entities different than a free market should. And Churchill had this line, he says, in the midst of crisis, remember first principles. And it's so true. Some people, I think, in the midst of the whole economic turmoil we were in, forgot first principles, which is government shouldn't be in the business of bailing people out, even if it is perceived they're too big to fail. Too big to, they'll have a huge impact on the overall economy. So you're exactly right. Politicians should do what they said and not raise taxes after they've said they wouldn't. And we need to, look, we need to keep our word. That's what the last election was all about. Electing people who are going to go there and do what they said, which is cut spending, and begin to put our ship of state on a path that's actually sustainable, and that's what we're all about doing. No, thank you, Leon. That was exactly right. Remember the party of Ronald Reagan is about 4 principles. Not 3, not 2, not 1, all 4. And all 4 are critical. And I think that the party I happen to belong to, we make a big mistake if we somehow say the values issue shouldn't be just as important as strong defense and lower taxes and less spending. So you're exactly right. What the president did Tuesday of this week, totally unprecedented. The Justice Department is supposed to defend the laws of the land. The Defense of Marriage Act, which says marriage should be what marriage has always been, pretty straightforward, should in fact be defended by our Justice Department. So what this president did is truly an unprecedented action. Think about this. Well, 2 things. On the marriage issue, every single time the voters, the people have had a chance to speak about marriage. Every single state where it's been on the ballot, The people have said marriage should be what marriage has always been. Marriage is marriage. Only in the courts. Only with some of these folks who think they're so much smarter than the rest of us has there ever been a different interpretation. So, and throughout this court process with the marriage issue, we've only had a couple bad decisions even in the courts. Now, think about this. We've had a couple bad decisions from the White House's perspective on the health care bill, right?
Yeah.
Think they're going to keep defending that thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course they are. So this playing politics with the actions of the Justice Department, totally wrong. This is a bill. This was a bill that was passed in 96 and signed by a Democrat president. And it's just unfortunate that our president decided not to enforce it. And then obviously, on the life issue, look, when the founders started the place, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Right.
It's kind of interesting the order they placed the rights they chose to mention. You can't go after your goals and dreams. You can't really pursue those things that have real meaning to you if you first don't have freedom. And you never have true freedom if government doesn't protect your fundamental right, your right to life.
Right.
And so sanctity of life is important, and we're going to be fighting about that. Hopefully the legislature will in fact pass this and we get it done both here and in Wisconsin and frankly Indiana. Other states are looking at it. And this is from a guy who's, my dad was a union worker. Nothing wrong with private sector unions. They want to collect. These are public employees, collective bargaining rights we're talking about. And frankly, as you all know, it's just unsustainable. You cannot keep doing the same. The whole private sector has moved to what's been called a defined contribution approach to benefits and retirement. And only public employees and frankly public employee unions are still in this defined benefit model. It has to change. You just can't keep doing it. It has to change for the sake of the young folks who are here. And so I support what they're doing. And I'm hoping that the governor of Wisconsin is going to stand tough and get this done. Same with Governor Kasich and our friends in the General Assembly. So we did that. We can have to go in the measure that's going to fund the government for the rest of this fiscal year. Again, as you point out, that's 1/15th, 1/16th of this year's deficit. So it's not going to actually, it's not that huge when you put it in context. But what we're dealing with now is just what's called the discretionary part of the budget, which is only about a third of the budget. So $100 billion from a third of the budget is starting to get significant. But again, as I would point out, it's a good first step to start putting us on the right path. So now, Democrats said no. They didn't even look at the bill. Everybody didn't even bring it up for consideration. So the current CR we're functioning under is supposed to expire this coming Friday night, 12 midnight on Friday. So to prevent the government from shutting down, which frankly I don't think politically is as it's a whole different world today than it was 16 years ago, the last time we had this debate. Being that as it is. To prevent that, we're saying, okay, we'll do a short-term stopgap measure for 2 weeks. And we're gonna cut $4 billion in cuts, or $4 billion in savings for the taxpayer. And we're actually gonna pick the same things that the president said made sense to actually start to reduce and spend. And the Democrats are still talking about, oh, we might shut down the government because we can't cut it. I mean, it's that ridiculous when you think about the other side. I actually think in the end they're gonna wake up and remember that there's all kinds of Americans who have a thing called common sense, and to cut just $4 billion for 2 weeks, it's very little, and we should do that. And then we can keep negotiating and trying to get back to what we passed a week and a half ago. So that's the position we're in. But you're exactly right. They didn't even do a budget last year. That's why we're in this what's called the continuing resolution debate every few months, and in this case now for 2 weeks. Marsha Blackburn has got a legislation to go after this and give Congress more say, because frankly it was the FCC who stepped in and decided this. She is exactly right when she equates this net neutrality debate to the whole fairness doctrine debate as well. So it's important that we fight that. Your second issue was you had Planned Parenthood. On the Planned Parenthood, you're exactly right. How many of you seen the video with what Planned Parenthood? It's comparable to it's comparable to the video a couple years ago with Acorn. Where some people went undercover and exposed just how ridiculous this organization is and how they're using our tax dollars. So we did have it in the bill that passed a week and a half ago. It's not in this 2-week stopgap measure, but trust me, I've been talking with Family Research Council, with Susan B. Anthony List, some great pro-family organizations that have that represent you in Washington. we're going to fight to get this Planned Parenthood. Look, the Democrat Congress even agreed to defund ACORN. Now, it's in the courts, but the Democrat Congress agreed to defund ACORN because of the video. Now we have a comparable evidence, visual evidence, relative to Planned Parenthood. I think we got a chance, in spite of Harry Reid still running the Senate and Barack Obama still in the White House, to really go after Planned Parenthood, and we should. And I forgot your third. You had net neutrality, Planned Parenthood?
Impeachment.
Oh. That's not going to happen. But I tell you what can happen is Congress can intervene. And we're looking at ways. I talked to Lamar Smith, who chairs the House Judiciary Committee, good conservative guy from San Antonio. And we're looking for ways the House can intervene and argue the case, probably with outside counsel from some of the American Alliance Defense Fund or some outside counsel that can help us argue the case. So we're looking to intervene so that we're not forfeiting the court arguments. We're actually going to go and argue the merits of why DOMA should be continue to be the law. Yeah. Look, do I think they're intentionally trying to? No, I don't. But I'll say it this way. If big government spending were going to get us out of this mess, we'd have been out of it a long time ago. That's all the government's done. So we know that doesn't work. What we know that does work is when you create a framework where entrepreneurs, small business owners, and families have more of their income, more of their resources to put to use in a good way. I mean, it's the Reagan model. When Reagan took office, we had 20% interest rates, we had unemployment high, we had all these problems, gaslighting, and Reagan said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to cut spending everywhere but national defense, and we're going to lower the tax burden on Americans. And probably most importantly, Reagan inspired optimism again in the American people. And good things happen. We got to adhere to the same model now. Get spending under control, get the tax burden down, so good things can happen. I will say this, two things. One, remember the day, you're right about things we've seen from this administration that we never thought we would see in the greatest country ever. And, you know, whether it's the president firing the CEO of General Motors, I mean, you never thought I'd see that, but it happened. The one that I point to is, remember the day, this is during the auto bailout debate, when the president stood at that press conference, stood at the podium, and ridiculed the bondholders at Chrysler, the secured creditors, the people who have a property right interest. They're the first in line. He ridiculed them and said, "You get to take the deal, take less than you deserve, less than you're." Basically, what the president was saying is, forget about the rule of law, forget about private property rights, forget about contract law. I'm the President of the United States, and I'm telling you to take the deal. Just like last week when he said, forget about precedent, forget about the Justice Department defending the laws of the land. This is, I never thought I'd see it in this country. And again, it's what's prompted what we've witnessed all over the nation. So it's obviously a huge concern. That's why, again, I try to always keep in the back of my mind, everything we do in Congress over the next 2 years, we should always keep in mind that we're trying to create the best possible environment so that someone from our side can beat President Obama in the 2012 presidential election year. It's really that important. But I think you can put folks in the back. No, great question, and you've hit the nail on the head. And more Americans every single day are waking up to the fact that this president, unfortunately, seems to think that there is just the executive branch in many of his actions. And I'm actually somewhat optimistic, though, that in light of what's going on in the Middle East, the impact that's having on energy prices, that we can make some progress even with this administration on permitting in the Gulf. Frankly, I think I shared with you before, I've had the privilege to travel for a weekend to Anwar and Alaska, where we should be drilling.
Right.
I think we can make some progress on this energy debate, just because Americans, when gas prices start going up like they do, it just obviously draws our attention to this issue more and say, why in the world are we making it so difficult for domestic companies to use domestic resources that the good Lord has blessed us with, and we will do it in as safe a way as possible, in an environmentally friendly way as possible, but we should use those resources to help meet our energy needs. It helps us when you think about the turmoil in the Middle East, lessening, reducing our dependence over there. So I'm hopeful we can make some progress on that issue. But you're right, target, and we have to keep this in mind, particularly with what's going on in Tunisia and Libya and Jordan and Egypt and Lebanon and every country around our ally over there. Relative to the individual military situation, not the expert on that. We can do some research and find out why the Pentagon is doing what they're doing. We worked on correcting it, and now, and I'll go back and look, the tax package that was put together at the end of last year, which I was totally in favor of keeping the rates where they were, but I ended up voting against that package because of all the new spending that was in it. There was a lot of new spending, whether it was unemployment compensation that wasn't paid for, additional spending elements in the bill, and frankly, the estate tax last year was 0, and now it's moved up to 35%, 45%. So that's the reason I voted against it. We will continue to work on it and see if we can make a difference. But again, you got to split Congress, and you got the White House, as you know, in the hands that it is. That perspective in mind, but I would just say a couple things. One, we have currently, when you factor state dollars, state tax dollars, and federal dollars, use 71 different means-tested social welfare programs. So the American people are the most generous people on the planet, and we have done a lot to help those of our citizens who are in a needy way. But that needs to be reformed. We're actually looking to put together a bill that would do that. We have, when you think about school breakfast, school lunch, AFDC, WIC program, and I'm forgetting a bunch of other educational social needs there are 71 different means-tested programs. You factor state dollars and federal dollars together, we spend more on those 71 programs than we spend on national defense. And remember, national defense is in the Constitution. We're supposed to spend your money on that. So you're exactly right. We need to keep that in mind. But America is spending a boatload of money on these areas right now. We have to reform them, make them work better, and begin to phase those down as well. Second, the other thing is, the more we do at the federal level, the less opportunity it gives Christian folks on the private level to do what you just described. You're again, I come back. Every study shows that the American people are the most generous people. We're also the biggest economy, so you can argue that point where we're the wealthiest nation too. But they've also done studies, self-described liberals, self-described conservatives. You know which one gives the most money to charities and helps people the most? It's by far conservative people. So the more government does, the less opportunity we allow the Christian principle of if you give, it comes back to you, and it's a positive thing for both recipient and person give. So we're diminishing those opportunities in the private world. So we need to keep that in mind as well. The other thing is, and you're exactly right, there are all kinds of programs that are good. But the fact is, we're broke. And here's the situation. The federal government is like the family out there making $50,000 a year, spending $80,000. You know what? Some of that $30,000 they're spending money on, probably good things. Maybe they got, as a family, they're going out to dinner once every couple of weeks and going to see doing a movie and good stuff, good time together as a family. But you know what? They can't keep doing it. And the same applies to federal. We're worse than that family because we're taking in 50, spending 80 year after year after year. Yep. And frankly, we're piling up this debt that's just going to be insurmountable if we don't get after it. So the truth is, we're broke. Everything. And I mean everything has to be looked at if we're going to fix it. And we should keep those principles in mind, those Christian principles. But I think there's a way to do this right that can put us on the right path. We're still going to be the most generous country, and we're still going to help people who have, particularly health care. That family who's got a pre-existing condition, we certainly have to fix that problem. And I think we can, but we can do it in a model that's consistent with American principles that doesn't involve the government deciding everything. So that's what we're looking to do. This is as fundamental as it gets. The government has made a promise to the citizens, and this is a contract we have it's like any contract, you got to honor it. And so I think, and again, I told you, I'm one of the most conservative guys in the place. We've got to meet this commitment. This is a promise. It's a sacred promise. And frankly, what we also have to do is we're looking at our long-term financial situation is we've got to reform Medicaid and Medicare. They have to move towards a more, what I call a family and individual empowerment model where the person and the family are in charge versus the federal government. So that has to happen. But I think Social Security fiscally is on much more solid ground long-term than the Medicaid, Medicare. So I think the reforms have to happen first in Medicaid, Medicare. And look, Social Security will have to have some changes down the road, but this is a promise we got to keep. And I'm all about making sure we do that.
Yeah.
And I apologize, I do have to leave here, but I could take